Well, thank you for viewing this video. It's a dreary day in Pittsburgh, so we're going to do a video on selector problems in the mid-70s Rockolas, and specifically models with the 3-digit 10-key keyboard. Rockola's 448 through 474. Most of the discussion will be on the 453 to 474, but all of these models have the more complicated 10-digit selector, which involves a selection control box and multiple components that have caused a lot of problems. Write in, read in, whatever issues are occurring more frequently, and we're going to talk about these in particular, sequences 1 through 9, and discuss problems that can occur at any of those steps. For instance, the first digit light doesn't work, or the second digit won't latch, the write-in motor won't start, or the write-in motor starts but then doesn't stop where it's supposed to, hammer coil doesn't get hammered, or the stop relay and the current limiting bulb don't work. Those are the issues we're going to be talking about in this video. Let's say right off the bat that I would like the viewers to be proactive and get a manual, and there are some components you'll need. You'll need a multimeter and some light bulbs, so we'll go over this. We'll start with the power supply, and hopefully we can get through this, and I hope it's valuable and you learn at least a few tips from this to fix your machines, because they are fixable. They're good machines. So let's get started.
We'll need a service manual, and whatever model you have would be fine. They're similar, 453 to 474. Now, the reason for that is we're going to be going through these sequences and the diagrams, so you're going to have to follow along. The next thing you're going to have to be able to do is replace the bulbs in your selector light sequencer up there. Now, the ones that are important are bulbs number 53. They are 14-volt AC bulbs. In particular, when you take this out, you'll have to be careful. You got to feather it out. Sometimes the plastic tabs are brittle, and sometimes you'll have to put it back in with a tie, and those plastic ties. But in particular, you will need to replace this 1, 2, all the number 53 bulbs. Now, if you have a number 57, 257 bulb, hey, that's great. But those two bulbs only come on when you've made a mistake or more coins and stuff. But you got to have a first digit light, second digit light, and a make selection light that work, or what's the point of checking out the system here? You got to do that. Now, the other thing, they're on the front of the power supply, you have these ice cube relays. They're the K3 and K4. The write-in relay and the stop relay are critical to the write-in process. So, and you're going to probably have to not only reseat them, but put a small screwdriver on each side, and then be able to pull out the, I don't know if I can do it here, but you've got to be able to pull the contents out, and that way you can actually see you'll put this relay back in the power supply, and then you can see whether it's working or not, because there's the color, you can't tell, but it's important to know, is the relay working or isn't it? And so that's the issue there. And then the other thing, and I've said this before, I don't mean to be redundant, but on the power supply, the selection system power Molex, 15 connections, you must ascertain that you've got minus 33 volts DC on pin 4, 25 volts AC on pin 6, and plus 33 on 15. In reference to ground, you're going to need to check this with a multimeter, because if you don't have those voltages, what's the point? That's what's needed, and that's where this is our starting point. Okay, let's go over and look at the components we're going to be talking about. Why is this so complex? Well, because you've got a keyboard and solenoid, all those connections to be cleaned, and then you've got a selection control panel here, 2 connectors that should be checked for loose wires, this circuit board, K6 and K7 relays, the jumpers, and then you've got your credit unit. This is the earlier one that does not have the circuit board, but I gotta tell you, same thing as before. This ADR relay and this selection impulse switch, you gotta clean those contacts and clean them again. And the same over here with the newer, this credit unit is for the 464, 468, 470. It's got this little circuit board in it. Please change this capacitor, 22 microfarad, and then reseat this guy. Make sure those connections are good, because that's the most critical component in there. The selection impulse switch needs to operate off of the cancel switch. So clean all those push-on contacts, take them off, clean them, check continuity of that switch. That switch does a lot. The same with this gang connector here. Reseat them, clean it, and put it back together. And then, of course, the power supply. There's where your 2 relays are, the right-in and stop relay that are critical to the right-in process. And here's your selection system power. Circuit breakers, you should be obviously check them. There are 3 capacitors inside. They should be replaced, 1200 microfarads, 100 and 100. But if your voltages are good, and for the purposes of this video, we won't worry about that as long as your voltages are okay here. Okay. 1, establishing credit. If you're on coin, you'll put a coin in and the credit switch should close. The other switch there is for that C1 capacitor in the selection control panel to charge it. So if you're on free play, which is fine, which means that you've taken out this spring and little metal piece, all you have to do is be sure that you establish some credit by pushing this over, and this one has credit. If there weren't any credit, the switch would be open, but it's closed since we have credit, and that's what you want. Now look at this diagram. My golly, just to get credit, you need 25 volts AC, you need minus 30 volts DC, and you need plus 33 volts DC, and that goes to the keyboard and makes the keyboard ready, so when you push buttons, something's going to happen. This selection control board is extremely complicated, complex. If I might say, one thing that I would look at to replace would be these tropical fish capacitors, these striped ones. They're going bad in the amplifier, and look at this one here closely. It's cracked. That's C6. Well, guess what? C1 and C6 are involved in every selection you make. So usually these boards are good, but if you have it out, I would replace C1, which is right here, this one, and I would replace this one. And then, of course, look at the board to be sure it's okay, but normally they are. I haven't had much problem with the silicon-controlled rectifiers, the diodes, but these bad boys are going bad, and if they're visibly cracked like that one is, for goodness sakes, replace it. They're 0.1 microfarads at 100 volts, very inexpensive. Other than that, I don't have too much to say here. If your select light, which is over here, if it goes on, that means your AC is working. I will say those resistors near the lights, they do get hot. People have asked about that. Yeah, they're reducing voltage to taking 25 volts down to 14 volts to light the bulb. So, but that's really all I'm going to say. If you have problems here, well, then reseat the connectors on the side. Be sure your credit switch is clean and making contact. Not much else to say here. Sequence 2, first digit light, first digit push button pressed. You will get the light goes on because of these connections in that's selection control panel board. Again, C1 and C6 are your guys there. If you're not getting your first digit light go on, certainly replace those capacitors if you have not done so already. If you press 1 as the first digit, K6, this relay here will actuate. And sometimes it's helpful just to, if you're having problems, just to let the door hang down so you can see. These are clear relays, so you can see if they work. If it does work, then look, check the connections throughout here. In this case, your ADR relay, look at that rascal. It isn't working, but it still has the connection to make this circuit work. The 1 amp fuses, they're all in here. Check them. You get your light, and then the K6 relay, and that's C1 capacitor. This is a 25 volt circuit for the most part, and again, a plus 33 for the keyboard, which is necessary. Now, suppose you didn't have anything. Suppose the key you press the first digit and nothing happens, no first digit light. Well, you check all these connections, and in my case, just recently, the problem was the credit unit, this ADR relay, or in the later one, it was that circuit board I pointed out to you. I had replaced the capacitor, that C20, but the board itself didn't seat right. And when I reseated that board, all of a sudden everything worked. The first digit light went on, and I was fine. This sequence 2 is not usually a troublemaker, but if there is a problem, reseat the K6 here, replace those 2 capacitors I talked about, and be sure you're either ADR relay or your sequence N relay is serviced. We're going to ignore sequence 3 because that's only applies to if you push the wrong button, and none of you are going to do that, right? So let's move on. Sequence 4, now it starts to get a little interesting. The second digit number is pressed, and note that for that to happen, your contacts up here all have to be clean now, especially 1 and this is A, this is your lock bar solenoid. When the second digit is pressed, as it's released, the lock bar solenoid should go on, and when that happens, then when you press the third digit, it'll stay in. So it's very important to know and listen for the latch, the solenoid to kick in as the second digit is pressed. And these are your circuits through there. Again, note that C6. If there's a problem, you might want to look at that and replace it. We start to get into our CRs at this point, silicone control relays. This is the number button, 0 to 9 of the second digit. The circuit is all basically AC, and it involves that this circuit board. So let's look at this a bit here. Again, 25 volts. Again, that SCR or sequence N relay contact has to work. The 1 amp fuse and the selection control panel has to be working, and those solenoid switches. Look at this little guy down here, R to R. What's that? That's a jumper, and it's got to be cleaned. And you know where it is? It's right here on the power supply. So you've got to take this off and clean it. Very important, or you're going to not have a complete circuit. Okay, so suppose your second digit light does not light and the solenoid does not kick in. What's the problem? This may be a bad SCR or diode in the particular series that you're working with. And those wires come over on the side connector. And if, say, 6 is bad, that would be D25 or the SCR. That's if it doesn't latch. Now, if it does latch and then nothing else happens, you press the third digit and nothing good happens, that's probably a loose wire coming over from either the right-in circuit board, the drum, or on the side of the SCR. So this guy, that gang connector, needs to be cleaned and reseated. And then there's a connection at the bottom of the cabinet. You can't, I really can't show it, but the bottom of the cabinet, there's two Molex connectors connect together to get power over to the right-in board here. So you've got to do that. So that's my only tip at this point. If your second digit does not latch, look for a bad SCR or diode. If your second digit latches but nothing else happens, look for a loose wire on the side connection. Okay, sequence 5. The third digit number is pressed. This is the last key. By the way, the keyboard numbers all should be exercised about 25 times before you start. I've talked about this in other videos, but it all starts at the keyboard, so make sure you clean all these slide switches and exercise them all about 25 times. CRC, any kind of cleaner. The more you exercise them, the cleaner they'll get, because they have to make and break to complete these circuits. And I just can't emphasize that enough. But in this particular sequence, pressing the third digit will open up the lock bar switch and close the latch switch. So those are here and here. Those guys must be cleaned, and that must happen. So if you're not getting, if you press the third digit and the right-in motor doesn't start, cleaning these guys is, and making sure that this one is making good contact is key. Sometimes these little plastic knobs are broken off and the switch doesn't actuate as it should, but it should come off that solenoid and activate. So this is key. But if those two latch switches work, the K3, which is your right-in relay, should be activated, and its contacts then will start the right-in motor, okay, search motor. Now, if that doesn't happen, then, and you're pretty sure your keys are clean, then you really want to examine this K3 right-in relay circuit and determine, well, is the right-in relay working or not? If it's working, then why isn't it getting power over to the search motor? And if it's not working, then what's the matter with its circuit? So these are the key components here, and you may want to take off the cover of the right-in relay. Please clean all the contacts and then put it back in the front of the power supply. You can see that, and there's your armature. You can just clean those contacts there, and then you can press the armature to actuate it yourself if you're not sure. Sometimes that's a good tip. You press the third digit, nothing happens. Well, put the, just carefully, you're only dealing with 25 volts here. Just press it down and see if the right-in motor starts then. If it does, then you know, well, why isn't this relay getting power? And I will tell you that the circuit here, there's a 100 microfarad capacitor we've talked about there's a resistor and a diode. I don't want to belabor this too much, but those three components are here in the inside the power supply. And this is that capacitor. There's the diode right there, and that's the resistor. You must check all three of those. And if you didn't replace that capacitor before, certainly do it now. It's weird. The K3 relay is a DC relay, as is the stop relay, but it's in the AC circuit. The only circuit you have here is 25 volts AC in this third digit circuit. So they try to rectify it with this diode, the resistor, and the capacitor. So those three components are very important if your right-in relay is not working. Now, so that's what you would examine. Clean the contacts. Then, if you get your right-in relay to work and you know it's working, but the search motor doesn't start, well, certainly service your motor. Be sure it's free and that the arm is free to move around. I should mention that whenever the right-in arm should move freely, okay? So that's one thing to look at. And then look at the circuit for the right-in motor. Well, it's got to go through K4, which is the stop relay. So you're going to have to take the stop relay off, clean the contacts, and be sure that circuit works. Note that K7 is involved with getting power to the hammer coils here. Note that K7 actuates if 4, 5, 6, or 7 are chosen as the third digit. If 0, 1, 2, and 3 are chosen, K7 isn't even in the loop. It goes through these jumpers. So make sure these jumpers are taken off and cleaned. If you have a 100 selection machine, you don't even have a K7. They just go directly through the jumpers. So you would just need to clean them. And then again, look at this guy here. What's that? PP. That's another jumper. We talked about the RR jumper that was on the front of the power supply. This jumper is difficult to find. Now here's a 470. And where is this jumper? Well, it's over here in the corner in the back. Gosh, you gotta find that guy and clean it and reseat it if you're having problems. And I wasn't even aware of this until recently. I had a selection problem. I couldn't get my right-in motor to work, and sure enough, a dirty connection here was the culprit. So that's pretty much all I have to say for this process. Getting the right-in motor to work involves servicing the right-in relay components and also cleaning the components in the stop relay, and of course K7 as well, and make sure in the contacts of all those relays are working. It can be daunting. Now sequence 6, 7, 8, and 9 all basically happen within a second. They're all spontaneous for that matter. So you have your right-in motor apparently are working, trying to find the hot spot, and if it scans and scans and scans and doesn't stop, you certainly should clean the circuit board and the wipers here of the right-in board. That would be number one. But then if it does not stop, or then you have to look at the stop relay circuit here, and it's you've got a resistor here, you've got that capacitor coming over here, you've got another resistor, you've got a diode across it, you have our friend the jumper again, and then and only then will it get power through the to the board and out. So a lot of components are involved. This is still your selection control panel here, But for my money, if you've got a problem with this circuit and the stop relay is not working, you must service these components, and here they are. These two guys, there's your capacitor and 0.56 resistor, and then it comes over through this connector here. Both these connectors should be separated and cleaned, because it comes over to the diode and that 120 resistor, and then it goes over to your relay here. And the other side of the relay goes down to our friend again, the jumper plug. So all of these things have to be cleaned and serviced. You may obviously have to check this diode and resistor, clean the contacts of the stop relay, and if you need to take it off, do that. If the current limiting bulb, which is under here, by the way, that's almost never bad. If the current limiting bulb lights, and that means the stop relay has obviously worked, so you wouldn't have to go through all this. But that's pretty much what sequence 6 is about, getting the stop relay to work. And if it works, then obviously the right-in motor gets shut off, and the rest of the sequences occur. For sequence 7, 8, and 9, they basically are occurring simultaneously and are set in motion pretty much by the stop relay contacts. So if you know your stop relay is working, the current limiting bulb came on, then check the contacts if you're having problems. In particular, this K41, that's the gray-red wire. Look at that coming over from the contacts here, and it goes to a diode. Be sure that diode is not open, and you got to examine that. Otherwise, clean the contacts, and then go over and look at what the K4 is doing here. It's activating the wobble plate switch on top, which allows the pin to get hammered through. And then its main activity here at the end is the 3 components in here that get actuated quickly. First is the reset, or it's like a credit cancel coil. Now, if you've put it on free play, there won't be the spring in there any longer, but it still needs to actuate that selection impulse switch. So make sure that's happening. And you may have to open up the credit unit and watch this to see what is or isn't happening. We talked about cleaning all those contacts, clean this. And then the ADR relay is the earlier version, but basically when that gets activated at the end of the whole sequence, that's what releases the keys and brings everything back to rest. The sequence end relay and circuit board is what's in the newer credit units of the 464, 468, 470. But earlier, the ADR accomplished the same thing. So those are the 3 key components in here, and you may have to just open up the credit unit, let it fall down, and watch this happen or not happen. And if it's not, then you try to figure out which connection in here is bad. These components usually aren't bad, but you're going to check the coil here, check continuity here. And then the last thing is, if your hammer coil still doesn't work, well, then it could, of course, be the hammer coil itself under a read-in arm. And you just have to check the 2 wires. The continuity of those coils should be around 45 to 50 ohms. And so check that. And if you're unsure, then select a non-hit side, and if that one works and the hit side doesn't, well, then it's a pretty good chance you've got a burnout right-in coil. But if neither of them work, I doubt that you have burnout coil on both hit and non-hit sides, so you'd have to check connections further. This can be daunting, but these machines are fixable, and I think what we'll do for next time is we'll, in about 2 weeks, I'll come up with a video of the readout process and then the selection process of the earlier machines, 436 to 444, which is less complicated, but still has its own challenges. So, hey, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this. Till next time, have a good day.